Hello there. I'm doing a live stream. Not sure if my audio is working actually here. Okay, let's try this again. Uh, okay. Here we go. Okay, hopefully that's working. I don't know if it's working, but we're going to trust that it is. Welcome to my live stream today. I'm Lisa Lacroix, and generally on Wednesdays I publish long-form interviews with guests on the Lisa Lacroix Show on YouTube, but I'm traveling right now in Bali as a nomad, as a digital nomad, and so I am doing a few less interviews than I normally would. So I figured today what I would do is go live, do a little bit of a life update, do some ask me anythings that will come from my TikTok channel on speaking skills, or if anyone, I'm not even sure, to tell you the truth, since I don't normally go live, if I'll even see comments. But if you are here and you're willing to say hello, let me know if you're watching the replay or if you are here live, and I will answer your questions, whether it's after the fact or in the moment, depending on whether I see them or not. So do post any questions or thoughts. The Ask Me Anything can be about speaking skills, could be about my own journey as a nomad right now in Bali, could be on any of the topics that I tend to speak about, which are often polarity. Oh, Crystal is here. Hi, Crystal. Thank you for letting me know that I'm being heard. Can you let me know, is my audio sound okay? This platform doesn't seem to have a audio video test. So if you can, let me know. I'm really happy to see that I can see your comments coming from Facebook. So thank you for being here. And I miss you. I already told you that. All right. So let me see. I am promoting my Speak for Yourself course, which is going to begin on June 3rd. I put a TikTok and an Instagram reel saying that I will be posting a bunch of content. Oh, what did I just do? Sounds excellent audio. Okay, great. Thank you. I'm learning this platform. I don't really know StreamYard all that well. So apparently if I click that button, it shows your comments on screen. So I just learned something new, which is great. So I pointed out that I'm going to be doing a lot of speaking skills content, and the reason being that I want to let people who might be appropriate students for the course to come into it. But also, if the course isn't appropriate for you, then I want to make sure that you have content, that you have ideas, that you have skills, because I believe that speaking skills are something we can always be improving, and that almost everyone can benefit from better both speaking skills and communication skills. The application for both is vast, far-reaching, inclusive. Whether you have a business or a social media platform, whether you are a teacher or a manager, whether you are run meetings or present content in your job or to the public, speaking skills are super important. And generally, communication skills, which is the larger umbrella, are also so important, because the skill and facility and ability to be nuanced and open and be a strong listener and communicate our desires are all so critical for having the types of relationships that we want to deepen into, that we want to experience as love and wholeness and fullness. If you're a parent, communication skills are super important. So I teach speaking skills through the lens of an acting framework when we're talking about the technicalities and the personal growth of speaking as a process. And I speak about communication skills through the lens of polarity and embodiment and connection, and in all the ways that they overlap, beautiful ways that they overlap and contribute to, to the rich ecosystem that is being a human being in relationship to not only to ourselves, but also to our loved ones and to people in the world. I just finished a podcast interview with Jamie Woolrab, which I think will publish next Wednesday. And it was such a fun conversation. So if you don't already, then subscribe to my YouTube channel and catch those interviews. I tend to interview people who I have some fascination with, who I think are amazing people, who I admire how they show up in the world, who I think have meaningful and important voices that the world needs to hear. I do not focus my guest choice on, A-list or who's the best guest to have, but rather who I think is someone who has a contribution to make. And it's something that I've always had, is an awareness of and a felt sense of someone's ability to be a powerful force in the world. And so I would say that the people that I have interviewed on both of my podcasts tend to be really incredible people that you need to hear from. So Jamie is one of those people, and I did a very different kind of interview with him today, where I had been recommended to other people in my polarity community that he was someone I should reach out to and meet, because we share a lot of interests. He, like me, is and was an actor. He's also a director and a producer. He's also a speaking and voice coach. And he is in the polarity work in the same community, the John Wineland community that I'm in. So a number of people said, you really need to speak with Jamie Woolrab. So I made the decision to do it a little differently, which is, normally when I'm interviewing someone I don't know, I reach out to the internet and I do a bunch of research and I come with quotes. I mean, a lot of the time I'm interviewing people that I already know, that I've met or, have a relationship with already. But if it's someone I don't know, I usually do a lot of research so that I can bring their words back to them. But in this case, I decided to do it like a first date and an emergent conversation. And at the beginning I said, Jamie, I haven't researched you. I don't know anything about you except for what I've heard from other people and what I've seen on a few Instagram posts. So we're just going to explore. And we had the most fun conversation, exploring all the ways that the central principles of polarity and embodiment and acting and speaking and communication are all one and the same. So that'll be next Wednesday. Crystal says, everything you're saying is so resonant. Thank you for that comment, Crystal. And yeah, well, Crystal also is someone who, well, I don't know if you saw this, but a couple days ago, there was a Casey Baker did a live with Kira Britton, who I was in my Women Speak Mastermind, and talking about their friendship that evolved. And I was thinking, wow, there's just been so many beautiful friendships that have come from the Women Speak community. And of course, Crystal is one of those, as well as a podcast guest that I've had on my show a few times. So I think what I'm going to do today is I'm going to answer some of the questions that I've been asked on my speaking skills content on both TikTok and Instagram. I posted recently a series, a 3-part series so far, on interrupting and being an interrupter, and what to do if you're used to, if you have a loved one who tends to be an interrupter. What often there are in the conversation of interruption, there are often the people who tend to be more likely to interject or interrupt, and others who sometimes can be triggered by and hurt by and quite upset by being interrupted, and sometimes that shuts them down even more. And why I speak about this is because it's a central part of both speaking, listening, and general communication and relationship that in my own life has been painful. It's been the source of a lot of pain in a few of my central relationships, most notably with my sister and with my now ex-husband, who are both very deep processors. They think about things in deep ways and they process information slowly, whereas my ADHD brain that has so many thoughts all at the same time and wants to communicate them as quickly as possible, and that gets excited when I understand something that someone else is sharing and want to respond to them and create more synthesis within the conversation, I tend to jump in really quickly. And that often can create a beautiful, fun, dynamic conversation with someone whose communication style is similar. And we can have this vibrant, enlivened dance of a back and forth that can be so so powerful and creative and beautiful. But if someone is more of a slow processor, that personality type of mine can cause pain and feel yeah, feel what's the word? There's a word I'm looking for. Feel like a major affront and damaging. And it took me many years to realize that not everyone thinks and processes information the same way I do. In fact, it was when I realized I have an ADHD-like brain that it became clear to me that not everybody else does. And so when I realized that not everyone thinks and processes information in the same way that I do, it made me realize that my way could be painful and difficult for people who are slower. So all the times that some loved ones had said, I feel like you don't care what I'm saying, what I'm thinking, or you're trying to overrun me, or you're trying to be right, suddenly made sense to me in a different way. And so when I was able to have this conversation, in particular, I remember this conversation with my sister where I described to her how my brain works and why I tend to jump in sometimes. And we had this meeting of seeing each other in a different, new way, and a deepening of understanding that healed so much, because in that moment, she understood a little bit more about the wildness of my mind, my brain, and and she was able to see it through the lens of excitement and enthusiasm and intensity that previously she had just seen as me trying to like oppress her opinion. And for me, understanding that her brain process was slow and deep, and that even though she didn't have the same style to jump right in the way that I do, that she still wanted space for her thoughts and her ideas. And so that awareness has made so much difference for me in my ability to see the person I'm communicating with and realize, okay, this person's a slower processor. The job now for you, Lisa, is to breathe and pause and show that you're present with the other person. And it did not come easily to me. It's been a journey. And so what I want to say is that whichever side of this equation you might be on, know that it's possible for us to have compassion for the other experience. I mean, this is obviously true, regardless of the experience we're talking about. When we are or be or experience life or ourselves or other people in a particular way, it is possible, although sometimes difficult, to have compassion for a very different worldview and experience. But this seems like one of the rich opportunities for us as human beings in relationship to others, and sometimes takes some time and some pain and sometimes some loss or errors or things that you sometimes then might have to go back and fix. Sometimes you do damage. Sometimes it's damaging relationships that is the thing that teaches you to see things a different way. So it's been a humbling thing for me. But so this interrupting series that we posted in the last couple of days. I think there's one more video to go out. It attempts to shed light on the experience of the other side of that dynamic. The intention is that if you're someone who tends to interrupt, to give ideas for how you can interact differently so that your relationships can deepen and so that they can be a positive place for love and growth and healing. And so that the person you're interacting with can feel more seen and known in ways that might challenge you, but can be really rewarding and fulfilling. And the series is also intending that if you're someone who is on the receiving end and tend to feel injured, damaged, affronted, oppressed by someone else being feeling commonly interrupted, that there's a process for you too. Sometimes that means getting clearer on your voice, getting more confident about bringing your voice into the conversation, because sometimes the people on that side of the dynamic can be people who don't feel confidence in bringing their voice, who don't know how to interject their point, or who don't perhaps trust themselves to speak up and to share, and then often will then feel triggered and resentful. So I'm coming at this from many different points. If you're on that side of the equation, it's possible that there's an opportunity for you to learn to trust your voice and to find ways to bring it into the conversation, to interject your thoughts and your perspective. And there's also the possibility of not taking the interruption that you're experiencing as personal. I think sometimes if we experience someone interrupting us as personal, that can shut us down even more. And then if we shut down even more, then we are even less likely to feel comfortable bringing our voice in. Okay, there's a comment here from Narbo, and I want to look at it. For some reason, I can't see it. And if I show it, it's going to show it on the screen. So I guess we're going to do that. Okay. Narbo says, whenever me and my girlfriend disagree, I allow her to go first and speak her mind, and then ask her if she is done so that I can start. She will still interrupt, though. So Narbo is obviously on the side of the conversation where he is more likely to be interrupted and to pause his voice. So it sounds like you're doing a great job, Narbo, in terms of letting your ego down and letting her speak first and speak her mind. I wonder what occurs to me in this topic, and I'm sure you're not alone, is that if you were to have a conversation with her, not in the middle of an argument and not in the middle of a disagreement, and say, when we get into disagreements, sometimes, I do my best to let you speak first. And then when you're done, I would like to share my thoughts too. And sometimes I feel that you don't listen. Is there a way that we can create, a habit, or would you be willing to pay more attention to letting me finish? So having more explicitness to the conversation and awareness of your patterns could make a difference. Here's another thing. I don't know if this is true in the circumstance you're describing, but one thing I'll invite you and anyone listening to consider: sometimes when we feel that we are being interrupted, it is because we are seeing communication as a monologue. So while people who are chronic interrupters like myself have to pay attention to not continuously repeating this pattern and to pausing and waiting, sometimes people who feel triggered by interruption are, and again, I'm not saying this is you, but it's something to consider, are people who, once they begin talking, see conversation as a monologue. So I've had this happen to me a number of times with people when I'll say, okay, I'm going to say my piece, and now I'm going to let you say your piece. And then the person will talk and talk and talk and talk, knowing that I'm not going to interrupt them. But now they're in a monologue, and there's no opportunity for us to go back and forth. Now, In a disagreement, it's a little bit different. So let's make a distinction between an active, engaged, thoughtful, connected conversation and a disagreement. I'm going to come back to the disagreement piece because I have another thought and another skill set that could potentially work for you. When it's a conversation, be aware that conversations are often most alive when we allow for the other person to interject. So, for most of us, whether we're interrupters or the interrupted, we can often have a more engaging conversation if we try to be a little more concise and what I would call speaking in the masculine sometimes, or at least becoming aware of when we're verbal processing. So, when it's your turn to speak, practicing self connection and connection with the other person through breath and pause and centeredness in the self to know what the piece of information that most needs to be said is, to then bring it to the other person and then pause. Sometimes I think we believe that we need to express everything we know and feel in one shot. And sometimes if we are sensitive to being interrupted and then we get the floor, sometimes that can be even more so. So the bottom line of all of this is awareness, self-awareness. If there was one skill set that I think is the most important one for all of us as human beings who interact with other humans, who want to be more effective in our communication, who want to be more effective in everything we do, the first and most important starting point is self-awareness. So that's something to think about. And then I wanted to bring another piece into the conversation around an interaction that is specifically a disagreement. There is a process called imago dialogue or imago listening that can be really important, a really beautiful structure to use when there is dissension or disagreement or conflict in a conversation. And the basic principles of it are that you invite the person to either listen or speak. And then so one person says, say I have a challenge and we have a disagreement, or I have something that I want to raise that is not resolved. I could say, are you able to, in a position where you could active listen to me, or you could hold space for me to share my perspective? If the person says yes, then you say, and this is also combining NVC and a couple other communication skills, but you say, when this thing happened, I felt, this is NVC, when this happened, when you slammed the brakes on in the car, I felt, and then feeling fear, because, and then you want to talk about a need or something that got hurt or pained or wasn't met, because I want to feel safe when I'm in the car with you. And I didn't in that moment. And then a request, would you be willing to? So the NVC framework is, when this happened, I felt something because, and a description of either the reason why or the story behind it, and then a request. Okay, this is getting a little convoluted, so we'll just go with it. We'll go with it. That's the NVC framework. And you want to keep it pretty simple. And if you have the feeling like, I don't want to talk like that, it feels so prescribed, NVC language is such a structure, it feels fake, you can say these things in slightly different ways that make them more natural. But sometimes when you have a structure to follow, it can be it can be a way in, a guide to get more comfortable with it. So Crystal says that was helpful. Great. Yeah. So, and I'll put this in the show notes, a guide to the NVC framework of the 4-part framework of, when this happened, I felt, because my need for, or my story about that was, and would you be willing to? So that's the first part, using an NVC framework, keeping it as brief as possible. And then in the imago dialogue framework, the person listening plays it back and says, what I think I hear you saying is, and then they say, what I think I hear you saying is that when I slammed on the brakes in the car, it created some fear in you, and you want to feel safe when you're in the car with me, and you would like me to drive slower. I think I forgot to say that part. You'd like me to drive more slowly when you're in the car with me. And then the person who did the initial speaking would say, yes, thank you. That's what I was saying. Now, maybe you got it wrong. Maybe you said, when you slammed on the brakes, you were angry and you just wanted to you get it wrong in some way. And then you say, is that right? Then the person speaking say, no, that wasn't right. What I actually said was, when you slammed on the brakes, I felt fear. And my desire to feel safe when I'm in the car with you wasn't met. So I'm hoping that you'd be willing to drive more slowly when you're in the car with me. So then the person says, okay, I understand. I think what you're saying is that when I slammed on the brakes, you felt fear, not anger. And you want me to drive slowly because you want to feel safe when you're in the car with me. And the original person says, yes, that is what I said. Okay, then the listener says, is there more? The original person with the complaint can think and say, actually, there is more. I also notice the same fear comes up when we're in the kitchen and you're cooking with oil. So the listener says, oh, you're noticing that there's a connection between this feeling of not feeling safe that was triggered by my slamming on the brakes, but that also occurs in the kitchen. Is that right? And then maybe the speaker says, I didn't say that it was triggered, but I guess you're right. Probably it was triggered by that. But yes, you're correct that there's a similar experience I have of not feeling safe in the kitchen when you're cooking with oil. So then you go back and forth until, and then the person says, yes, that's right. Is there more? And then the person who has the complaint thinks again and says, maybe there is more. Maybe they have to keep on going until the person feels really heard. And then when they feel fully heard and there is no more, then they say, no, that's it. I think I've said everything. And if you do this process, following these steps, what often happens if you do it well, and you really listen with intent to what the person is saying and play it back to them, the person with the complaint will often feel so heard and understood that the complaint dissolves. Okay, so Crystal says it's great because me and partner can interpret things differently at times. Yes, that's so true. And this is so common and so human for all of us. And so when we can use these structures as ways in that we both understand how they work, sometimes it can be really healing. Okay, Narbo says, when you shout at me, I felt annoyed because my parents used to shout at each other. Would you be willing to always speak in a normal voice while addressing me? Did I get it right? Okay, so let me see. So first of all, I wouldn't generalize it to when you always shout at me, but I would talk about a specific thing in general. I think it can be a lot, this morning when we were having coffee, and here's the other thing. If you say when you shout at me, sometimes people don't feel they're shouting at you. Sometimes that's an interpretation. So that's a little tricky too. So when you raised your voice this morning when we were having coffee, I felt annoyed because, so the one thing you're missing in here is you didn't talk about what the experience, you just said a circumstance, but you didn't draw a connection between what was missing for you or what the emotional impact was for you. So you say, I feel annoyed because my parents used to shout at each other. Okay, so that seems like a statement of fact, but it doesn't actually show the vulnerability of your own experience. So it might be that I felt annoyed because, and here's where you get to go deeper in your own self-awareness. My guess is that it's not really about annoyance, but there's something underneath this. In fact, you might say that and say, you know what? I just realized there's something deeper to this. It's not that I felt annoyed. It's that I felt annoyed in that moment because my parents used to shout at each other. And when they did, I felt like they might leave. And that raised my sense of abandonment. So when you shout at me, I get triggered. It feels annoying because My parents used to shout at each other, and that raises a feeling of abandonment for me. So, would you be willing to speak in a quieter voice than the one you spoke to me within this morning? So, complicated one because there's a lot of habits in there, but and I'm not saying that this MBC structure is easy. It takes a lot of practice to get to it, but the more we use it, the more we can be reflective of the fact that the idea is to first of all recognize the circumstance itself, not your interpretation of it, but the actual circumstance, what happened that everyone could agree to, um, and and which again is hard because we're human beings and we experience things differently, and then to get to the true heart of the feeling underneath it. The annoyance is probably sitting on top of something else, whether it's anger or pain or fear. So you want to go to the deepest emotion you can possibly find. And then when you describe the reason why, you want to address it in terms of needs. So, needs or stories. So the need could be because as a child, I wanted to be safe and I didn't feel safe. Or because I had the need for love in my household, and it's reminding me that it wasn't in my childhood house and it doesn't feel like it is here. Or it could be a story because my story is that when you yell, it means you're about to leave. So the other person can say, oh, I didn't know that when I raised my voice, that triggers in you a feeling that I'm going to abandon you. No, not at all. So we're wanting to always communicate in ways that create more understanding and more compassion for ourselves and for each other. So I hope that was helpful, Navo. Not sure how I move this back out. Hide. Okay. It seems like I can't. Honestly, that sounds fun if we have a plan to do this, Crystal. Yeah, I think it is really, really fun practice. And here's the other thing that I found so interesting about the Imago dialogue practice. When you play it back, sometimes we feel like we have to get so creative. And when people start to do it, and they'll one person will say, well, when you slammed on the brakes in the car, I felt fear because my need for safety didn't feel met. And I wonder if and sometimes what people can do is then when they play it back, they're wanting to not say it back the same. They're wanting it to be like, I'm not just going to parrot what you said because that's going to feel terrible. So they'll make up a new thing like, when we were driving and I drove in a way that you didn't really like, then you felt angry at me because you didn't feel safe. And then chances are the person's going to say, no, that's not what I said. And they're not going to feel heard. The irony and the surprising thing is that especially when situations are difficult or painful or contentious, that if you actually play it right back to the person and say, what I think I'm hearing is when I slammed on the brakes, when I was driving this morning, you felt fear because your need for safety wasn't met. And you would like me to drive more slowly. What happens a lot of times is the person goes, yes, that is what I said. And they feel so heard. And I've seen this happen so many times where people think they have to be creative or say it back or that it's going to be offensive to parrot what the person said. But if we're listening in such a way that we can play back exactly what the person said to us in a difficult situation, first of all, we have been paying attention. We have heard them. And they're going to feel that we were paying attention and that they were heard. It's really kind of magical and quite a practice. So yeah, if you do practice this and try it on, then let me know how it goes. I think it's one of the most powerful listening and communication skills that I know in terms of deepening understanding in the face of a difficulty. And then the other thing on it is when somebody in a difficult situation says to you, is there more? That is such an invitation for connection and can feel so good to someone who's feeling pain and misunderstanding. So for the person who's listening in that situation, sometimes it can require letting down your own ego and the part of you that says, but I want to be heard too, but I want to be heard too. But my experience has been that when we practice this technique, the level of connection and healing and understanding that comes from it is worth so much more than our egos the satisfaction of our ego being right. So, and then it's also possible, in another moment to close that practice and say, I would love to I have a piece I'd like to share also. But it's usually fairly important to separate them, to have it be one directional. All right. So that was nonviolent communication, 4-part practice combined with Imago listening dialogue. And I'll put information in the show notes on that. Let me see. I'm going to go and look at my TikTok feed and see if there are other specific questions on recent posts that we can talk about. Okay, we talked about the interrupting series, and speaking skills. Okay. Q&A. I don't know. Maybe that's all we need for today. Arnold's Grooves wants to know if you should always engage your eyes with your audience. Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe that's all we need for today. Let me see if there's anything else that I want to share. Well, a little life update, I guess. I'm in Bali, and I was scheduled to go to Singapore for a dance competition last weekend, and then to go to Thailand because I love Thailand and I wanted to go visit Thailand again. But I'm so in love with Bali and the people here and the culture and the depth of love and acceptance and beauty that exists here that I just canceled everything else and decided that I'm going to stay here for the entire time that I have available to me. So I'm here for another couple of weeks, and it's just been such a beautiful experience to be here and to drop into an essentially markedly different perspective on being a human being in relationship to other human beings. I wrote a post on Facebook and on Instagram about it, about the fact that the Balinese people and the Hindu culture that is in Bali, which is a different Hinduism than in India. They say it's a totally different religion. I'm going to have to do some studying about it because it's so beautiful. But from what my experience is, and I'm not trying to be all roses and rainbows and unicorns and all that stuff. I get that there's a lot of pain here also, and there's difficulty and, lots of other things. But ultimately, the essence of the culture here, as I've experienced it, is based on Hindu belief systems around acceptance and love and being warm and karma, and that the belief that what I do and how I be in the world not only might come back to me in this lifetime or in this moment or in another lifetime, but I get the karmic experience of being a warm, loving, accepting person in that moment. Which it's so funny because I don't know why I never understood or heard karma in the same way. And I'm going to be doing an interview tomorrow with my friend Victoria Lorient Fabish because we had a conversation about karma and about affirmations. And we're going to go deeper into that in a conversation tomorrow that I'll probably publish next week. But yes, Crystal says being warm feels really good. So this is the essence of it, is that I believe that we as human beings are love, that we are accepting, that we are good people, that that's our true nature. And that it's only from pain or misunderstanding or injury or trauma or some other painful thing that happens to us that we are anything other than that. Some belief system that says we have to be right and justice must be served and we need to be better or more or different, or you need to be better or more or different. And the truth of karma is that it's the ultimate in self-acceptance and the ultimate in self-responsibility. That how I am in every given moment, the lens I'm seeing things through in every single moment, is my reward for being that. So yes, as Crystal says, being warm feels good. Being a loving person feels really good. Being generous towards other people feels really good. This is the true nature of karma. Now, Bo says we are naturally designed to be good. That's why when you hurt someone, you subconsciously feel it. Right. So the corollary is also true. If we are not good, if we are judging, if we are hurting, if we are excluding, we suffer from the experience of that in the moment, consciously or unconsciously, whether we're aware of it or not. There's a heart injury to being hurtful that we experience in that moment. So karma is immediate, and it also occurs over time and space and generations and lifetimes. I mean, depending on what your belief system is. I don't have the clearest, purest version of other lifetimes, but I've been really illuminated and informed and inspired by the fact that that's also one of the pieces that the Balinese people consider. So, for example, I was talking with one man a couple of days ago and asking him about this piece. Why is it the Balinese people who work so hard for such long hours and have so little money, why is it that people are still so warm and open, and even if something bad happens to them, that they still don't go into a judgmental, retributive kind of attitude? And he said, because he said, if something happens to me that's not good, then I know that it has something, that there's something that he said it in a way that's not my religious perspective or my spiritual perspective. He said something from inside of his religious perspective, which was, I think the way he said it was, I know if something bad happens to me, then I am clearing my karma from another lifetime, something like that. And even though I don't see it or wouldn't use those same words, there was a part of what he said that I thought was so beautiful, which is that instead of lashing out or looking for somebody to make it up to me or change or fix or pay back or suffer the consequences of something negative that occurred to me, instead I think, what role did I play in this? Either in this moment, in this lifetime, or in another lifetime. What role did I play that engendered this experience to occur in my life? Ultimate in self-responsibility. So Nebo says, karma is part of a belief system. I thought it was just a statement. No, karma is a very central part of the Balinese version of Hinduism. It's, in fact, every time I ask a Balinese person about why is there this, warmth and love and acceptance in all circumstances here, they said, well, because we believe in karma, because karma's, our religion tells us, we're taught from the time we're very young that you must be good. So I don't know. I have a bunch more learning I need to do about Balinese Hinduism because it appears to be its own specific thing. The other thing about Balinese Hinduism, I don't know if you're still here, Crystal, but you'll relate to this around the trees. They believe that, okay, I might say this wrong. I'm not sure if they believe that every tree is a god or if there's a god that governs every tree. Like, God is in every single thing. Like, there's only one God, but I think they call it a minor god. There's a minor god in that tree. There's a minor god in that earth. There's a minor god in this rock. There's a minor god in the animals, like everything in yourself too. So if you see and experience everything as God, how can you not be coming from a place of all is good? My true nature is truth. My true nature is beauty. My true nature is acceptance. So, yeah. So yeah, I feel like I've been really fundamentally changed by the teeny bit of understanding I have of Balinese Hinduism, and fundamentally changed by the experience of being around people who will tell me things like, this negative thing happened to me, and I looked into myself to see how can I be better. Imagine if in our world, like, think about how different this is in our Western world. The idea that someone says, something happened to me, somebody did something unfair, unright, stole money. In one case, it was stole a lot of money. The person was telling me somebody did something that was wrong to me, hurtful in some way. And my automatic response was to go, How did I play a role in this? In my divorce, I did this long reconciliation process, and it took me 5 years to get to what was my role. I mean, not really. It took me, it was a 5-year process. Let's put it that way. So it's just so not in our standard way of being, in our, in our way of thinking in our Western culture. We're so oriented on right, wrong, good, bad, fair, unfair. Crystal says everything is of this earth, the cosmos, the everything. Let's put that up on the screen for a minute. So beautiful. Everything is of the earth, the cosmos, the everything. Thank you for that, Crystal. Yeah. And I think it's when we know that, when we feel that, when we are in the resonance of that, how can we be anything but good to ourselves and to each other? That's the other thing that I'm going to finish with. I've got one more thing I want to say about this that I also have been really profoundly impacted by and found so beautiful, is that in this concept of karma, people have told me that I if something bad happens, I know it's that my karma because of some way that I'm responsible, and I want to be better. I want to clear my karma. I want to what's the word? There's a word, water purification. I want to purify who I am. And so this vision of being, I'm going to purify myself to be that better person. But there's no shame feeling in it. There is no shame. This peace. In our Western culture, when we recognize something that we have done wrong or some way we could be better, it's so imbued with shame and judgment. Like the judgment is so deep that not being our best, most purified self comes with shame. Whereas what I hear here is in Bali, in this culture, is I want to purify myself by thinking good thoughts, by being a good person, by taking care of my family, by taking care of my community, by praying to God, by bringing the offerings. And that to whatever degree I didn't do that well is an opportunity for me to do better. But there's no shame a part of it. And to hear somebody say, oh, I just pray and work to purify my karma and to be better is like, oh, it just melts my heart so much. I could cry. We have so much shame and pain and judgment and dissension and righteousness and in our culture. And there's something just so incredibly beautiful about the possibility of living our lives in ways where we love ourselves, where we accept ourselves, and that extends to the other people in our lives and to the collective in general. And like Crystal says, to the earth, to the cosmos, to the everything. All right, I'm going to leave it there. I want to say thank you so much for being here. If you're watching the replay and you have thoughts, please comment. If you have questions, if you want to, anything, just please put the comment down and I'll be sure to come back and to respond to it after the fact. But let me know that you're watching the replay. So thank you so much for being here. I send you so much love and appreciation. I'm just going to end with a little bit of a breath and gratitude for this life we all get to live. In this presence we can all choose to be, and the opportunities for learning and connection and hope that are available to us all. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.